the Notre Dame pass game against the Virginia pass defense. And as I had mentioned prior, I will say that at times Virginia is okay in the pass game. At times. But it just always seems like if there's a 50-50 ball or if there's a chance for the offense to make a play, it seems like they do. In the games that I have watched.
They don't defend the perimeter one-on-ones well at all. They have no concept of how to defend a back shoulder.
Right.
And BYU just kept running it over and over and over.
And I will also say that when they're in zone, there's a guy that tends to get loose an awful lot. Now, whether the quarterback finds that particular receiver or not is another conversation. But it seems like somebody gets loose an awful lot in zone. There seems to be a lot of confusion to me as I watch these games. Two guys go into the same area, just letting a guy go within their own zone when they shouldn't because they're thinking somebody else is coming in, whatever. It just seems like there's guys running open just an awful, awful lot.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it boils down to, Vince, they don't really have an identity defensively.
Yeah,
they have personnel that doesn't fit what they're trying to do defensively, and I think that's something that has hurt them this season.
Right.
I think that when you recruit to a certain look, right, and you're trying to be a certain team, and then you recruit to that, and then you have to now start doing things that are different from that, you're going to have some problems, and I think that's what's hurt Virginia is they recruited to a big 3-4 personnel. And they don't have that personnel. And it's really kind of weird because 2 years ago, Virginia had one of the best secondaries Notre Dame faced. And if you remember that 2009 secondary that had Bryce Hall.
That's right.
In 2019, that secondary was really good. And now you look at it and you're like, wow, what happened to them? Because it's not the same team. And it's because I think they're not the same defense. They're doing different things now. Now it's the same coaches, and that's I think part of the problem is they're trying to teach something that I don't think they necessarily understand. It'd be kind of like this. Imagine if Tommy Rees is the offensive coordinator of Notre Dame. Imagine Brian Kelly retires, and they hire Jeff Monken, the Army coach, and he says, "Okay, Tommy, I want you to run my option offense." Well, Tommy can learn it to a degree, but he's not going to really be able to run it effectively because he doesn't know the ins and outs of it.
Right.
And part of it is, well, when we're struggling, what are the buttons we need to push to get ourselves on track?
Sure.
That's sort of a really rough analogy of what it's like. I think these coaches are trying to change to something that's not part of who they are. And it's not just tweaking who you are. It's a complete dramatic shift of what they're trying to do. And it doesn't really work. And and because of the way they've recruited, they have personnel playing at positions that they're not really comfortable in. And I think that's something that's really hurt their pass game because, you mentioned at times their pass defense is pretty good. Very few times.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I saw some sticky corner action, some things like that. But again, it's few and far between. I will admit that.
And I'll tell you something. So they played Notre Dame in 2019, and Notre Dame only passed for 165 yards in that game. If you remember, Notre Dame had 2 defensive touchdowns and then another fumble return that was like inside the 5. I mean, it was the pass rush just ate Virginia up that game. Coming into that game, as I said, Virginia had a really good pass defense. The year before, in 2018, Virginia only gave up 183 passing yards a game. They gave up 12 touchdowns and had 17 interceptions. They came into 2019, and until they started off well, gave up 185, 130, 234 to Florida State in a win, 206, 165, 182, 118, 133. Okay, but in one of those later games against Miami, Bryce Hall got hurt. If you remember that, he just blew his knee up, and he just wasn't that. I think he came back in 2020, but he wasn't that guy anymore. I can't remember if he came back in 2020 or not, but that crushed them, and that's kind of when you started to see the evolution. And if you look at the rest of that year, They gave up 350. Remember, like 234 was the most they'd given up, right?
Right.
They had in 8 games, they'd only given up more than 200 passing yards twice. Since then, this is what Virginia has done. This is 353, 229, 313, 311, 408, 305. 2020, 286, 329, 184, 309, 322, 443, 161, 278, 520, 212. And then this year, 89 against William and Mary. And since then, 221, 307, 270, 203, 270, 215, 300, 349. They went from being one of the best pass defenses in the country 2 seasons ago to now their pass defense can't stop anybody. And it's been one of the most strange, immediate transformations I've ever seen.
Right.
And part of it, again, is I don't think this staff fully understands the ins and outs of what they're trying to run because they've changed from who they used to be. They used to be a very traditional defense that relied on their corners to play off man, and they were really smart and they were really sound. And at the time, the ACC didn't have a bunch of really high outscoring offenses. Remember, 2 years ago, Pitt's offense was garbage. You know what I mean? Like 2 years ago, Pitt was like a nothing but a defensive team. And maybe it was 3 years ago. And it's just like now you look at Pitt, and Pitt's scoring on everybody now. I mean, the league has changed in a hurry. Yeah, 2 years ago, 2019, Pitt averaged 21.2 points per game. Now they're averaging 45. And so the league changed in a hurry. And I don't think Virginia was prepared for how it changed.
Right.
And that's really the thing is like I and it's not that like, okay, so like 2019 you had Clemson at 43.9. And then after that it was Louisville at 33, North Carolina at 33, then Wake Forest. There's like 5 other teams that scored over 30. Right? And right now there's still only 6 teams that score over 30, but now it's Pitt's at 45, Wake Forest is at 44.7, North Carolina's at 38.9. Miami's at 32. I mean, so now a lot more teams in this league can score and score a lot. And if you notice that when I mentioned all those teams, no Clemson. Clemson's 13th in the ACC right now in scoring. So it's not like, oh, it's Clemson again. And so the league has changed quickly, and they haven't been able to keep up. I mean, 2 years ago, Wake Forest was at 31.8. North Carolina was at 33. Now Wake Forest is at 45 points a game. Hits at 45 points a game.
Now, would you have completely overhauled the way they do things defensively, or would you have stuck with what they? Would you have overhauled completely what they did defensively, like kind of how they did, or would you have stuck with what they do and just do that better?
I think they should have tried to alter it within who they are, and then started recruiting to what they wanted to be.
Okay, as opposed to trying to change.
You can't put players in a situation where you're asking them to do things they can't do.
Right.
And that ultimately is the problem. You talk about you watch the games, Vince, and how many times are you seeing their corners get beat on back shoulders? Because they've got bigger corners, and those guys just aren't real athletic.
Right.
Those are guys that should be playing off coverage and keeping things in front of them.
Sure.
Right. That's what they're better geared more to do.
Sure.
Anthony Johnson's a big old physical corner. The way that they play, so their field, they're going to play off a lot. Right, their safeties are off, their corners are off, and then Anthony Johnson's their boundary corner. He's like 6'1", about 200 pounds, big physical kid. He presses a lot. He's pretty good at it. He gets a little grabby. He'll get called for PIs, but he's a pretty decent player. But a lot of the success they have is to the field, and then attacking their safeties. And the way that they play this defense now, they leave their safeties exposed a lot in coverage, and that hasn't worked real well for them.
Right.
And so to me, that's something that they've got to try to figure out ways to not get their safeties as exposed anymore. But the thing that they've done all year is they give up a lot of big plays down the field. And I'm looking at I'm watching them like, boy, this they shouldn't be leaving that guy in that situation. Boy, they shouldn't be leaving that guy in that situation.
Exactly. Yes.
And that's what it boils down to me is you're asking guys to do things they can't do.
Right.
And that's just not a recipe for success, in my opinion. And if they were going to do that, then they should have done something in a way that says, okay, let's alter what we're going to do. And yeah, we're going to give up big plays, but at least we're going to try to find ways to be, turnover prone. But they're not really that either. I mean, you can see they only have 5 interceptions on the year. So so let's get specific on what Notre Dame in this matchup. Number one, your RPOs have to be a big part of what you do. Early down success is huge against Virginia. They're going to give you stuff. Take it. Don't be afraid to take Take the hitches, take the slides, take the outs.
Right.
Take the field flood concepts. I think are real effective. Whether it's with sprint outs, whether it's drop back, the field flood concepts can be very effective. Take advantage of Anthony Johnson's aggressiveness by getting him to chase. I think you can do some things where, like one thing I would love to see is sort of, if you've got your tight, in like a 2x2 set, you've got your tight end to that side, have your tight end on the ball, either lined up attached or in a flex, and have Kevin Austin off the ball and then motion him and, make Anthony Johnson flip his hips, right? That it's not really what he wants to do. He wants to just press and jam you. And once he kind of gets that lock on you, he's in good. What you want to get him doing is chasing. So stack him and, send Kevin Austin on crossing routes, and drag routes,
yes.
Or do things where you run your tight end right through Anthony Johnson, right, and then bring Kevin Austin inside against your safeties, okay. And then if they want to switch that, right, if they want to switch that, okay, then you've got some things you can do. If they want to try to play over that and have Anthony Johnson still go over top and then that guy run, then I'm running delay follows with my running back, right? So send them up and then just delay and, slide, Kyron Williams right out of there, or, bring those guys vertical and then bring your slots and your X on crossers to replace. Anything you can do to get their linebackers and safeties in isolations is a plus for this game because they cannot cover. They're not good cover players. And so, and when I mean cover, I mean vertically.
Right.
Those are things Notre Dame and vertically and then on chasers down the field where Virginia's linebackers are pretty good. Like Nick Johnson, for example. If you're just throwing quick swings and quick slides to the field, he's going to play it and get downhill in a hurry and jump all over it, right? Get him vertical first and then let Kyron Williams beat him on some routes where he's got to flip his hips. Those are different things that I think you can do, but take the RPOs, right? Don't just – and the big thing is you have to have the middle of the field accounted for constantly because Virginia, first of all, they're not good in the middle of the field.
No.
Number one.
No, they're not.
Number two, when I watch them play, I see a team that will try to do things. They know they stink on defense, right? That's the one thing. They're very aware that they're not good. So they will try to dial up some things. We will see a corner fire, at least one or two corner fires this game. That's just who they are. And no, in fact, Notre Dame still hasn't figured out how to pick it up.
It's who they are, and they've seen it effective on the film against Notre Dame. So those two things combined.
Yes. The only teams that haven't beat Notre Dame for corner fires are teams that don't run corner fires. So
I would put one in.
Huh?
I said I would put one in.
Yes. Well, I would have one down.
Just saying.
Middle of the field's going to be there too. They will. I mean, there's times where, and I'm trying to remember who it was, but I can't remember who it was. But they ran just like a little tight end pop right behind because Virginia they'll just bring their inside linebackers, and then there's this huge gap in between the linebacker level and the safeties.
That was it was well, they did, at least they did it in the Wake Forest game for sure. Okay. He was actually it was a tight end, but he was detached. He was in the slot.
He was like flexed out, right?
But he replaced the linebacker,
right?
And it was an instant. I mean, it was wide open.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's Mayer or Kevin Austin or somebody,
totally vacated.
The middle of the field has to be a part of your game plan.
Yes,
and because that's where their worst cover players are.
Right.
So that doesn't mean you don't hit the outs, and I think out cuts, flood concepts of the outside. This is a game where four verts will be effective, right? So you ran it a bunch last week.
Yeah, they did.
This is a week but attack the seams, because the thing that four verts does for you is it allows you to hit those back shoulders. It allows you to attack the seams. It allows you to find their vulnerabilities, because the way that they drop 8 is not like the way that Navy drops 8, where Navy was dropping 8 sort of aggressively. The way that Virginia does it is like there's like nobody on the screen except for the 3 linebackers after like a second. You know what I mean? It's like there's just these big soft spots. Just take those shots, take those 5 to 6 yard gains. Now they may watch how Navy gave Notre Dame problems, and I feel like the drop 8 thing is frustrating because we've been talking about this in Stanford in 2010.
Yeah,
this has been something teams have had success with against Brian Kelly's offenses for years. They didn't do it as much when Chip Long was here because Chip had ways of exploiting it, and it didn't really work a whole lot in 2015 because you could just Deshaun Kaiser was such a great deep ball thrower, and Malik Zaire was such a great deep ball thrower, and you had Will Fuller, Chris Brown, and Amir Carl. You just kind of, okay, fine. You want to drop 8 and not give. I mean, and they had the best offensive line in college football. Deshaun could just take his time and just launch it and outrun your defense,
Because my guy runs a lot faster forward than your guys do dropping backwards. So
and you had to account for CJ Prosise out of the backfield and all those type of things. So they're going to have to figure that out because, look, teams are copycats. They're going to be like, man, if Navy could give Notre Dame problems with that,
absolutely.
Hey, with our guys, we could give them problems with that. So they're going to have a plan. And so, I think the way that Virginia plays, I think Four Verts is more effective than it was last week. Again, because as you mentioned, Vince, the back shoulders are there all day.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got to be willing to throw them, though. That's the question.
Yeah.
But you also have to do some vertical stuff. And now, again, Four Verts is a horizontal stretch, right? It is not a vertical stretch. Four verts explains the routes that are being run. Four verticals, right? A vertical stretch is, again, similar thing. It's high-low, but it's actually it's with guys going like this, right? Because you're stretching the defense vertically.
Right.
It's about the read. You're reading vertically. You're stretching
1,000 different times just to people.
But we have new people in the channel, so I want to make sure that they understand. Horizontal stretch is when you're kind of stretching them left to right with the read. Four verts means your read is kind of going horizontally. Okay, so that's why it sounds like, wait a minute, four verts is a horizontal stretch? I don't understand. Right. So that's basically what that means. But wasn't as effective last week consistently. They did hit a couple big plays with it. This is a game where I think you could run it. You could run a heavy dose of it. Now, the thing is, Virginia saw you run it 87,000 times last week.
Exactly.
They're going to have a plan for it. So you need to have something to go with it. So one thing I would consider doing is, as I said earlier, is, you run your verts to the field, okay? And then, do the thing where you've got Mayer attached or George Takis attached, bring Kevin Austin on a stack, send Takis on a wide fade to try to run through Anthony Johnson, and then just have Kevin Austin run at 5 to 6 yard depth across the field. Make them chase you. Because what's going to happen is if the linebackers close hard on Austin, that field seam is there. Bam, you just throw it right behind the linebackers because their safeties take off, Vince. I mean, you've seen it. Their safeties bail. And then if the linebackers are running underneath that seam to Michael Mayer, that's why I would kind of have Takis at the boundary, because if they're going to run with Michael Mayer on the seam, you bring Kevin Austin on the crossing route, it's game over. I mean, those are things that I want to see. So it requires just a little creativity. It requires a little bit of self-analysis, right? Some self-reflection. Here's what we ran a lot of. They're going to be prepared for that. How can we counter what they're going to do to stop it? That's what good offensive coordinators do.
Sure.
And that's what I want to see from Coach Reese this week. Because if we see that, this is certainly a matchup Notre Dame can take advantage of. I mean, Notre Dame's numbers are okay in the past game.
Yeah.
They're okay.
They're okay.
But they're way better than Virginia's numbers.
Right. Exactly. So it's clearly an advantage for Notre Dame. I mean, just clearly.
Right. So, and it's also a personnel advantage. As I mentioned, Virginia just does not have a lot of speed on defense.
Right.
They don't have a lot of speed on defense. Now, I do like Anthony Johnson. I think he's a good corner. Like, he is a good boundary physical corner. He'll get beat from time to time, and he doesn't play the back shoulders well, but he's physical. He forces a lot of incompletion. So I'm not saying avoid him. But what I'm saying is the game plan with Kevin Austin needs to be ways where you're getting Anthony Johnson out of his comfort zone. His comfort zone is you just line up in the boundary, and I'm going to get in your face, and I'm going to play you, right? That's what he wants to do. What's frustrated me with Notre Dame this year is they haven't done things to counter teams that like to do that. So like we talked about, stacking, right? Getting that guy on the move, things along those lines. Putting a different type of athlete there. Put Michael Mayer backside and have your three receivers. And if Anthony Johnson wants to stay backside, he can fight with Michael Mayer all he wants. I'm going to run my three receivers to the field. Those are all things that I think you can do effectively against Virginia. But at the end of the day, the big thing is, Vince, you've got to protect the quarterback. Virginia's not a great pass rushing team. As you see there, they rank 120th in the country. According to Pro Football Focus, they only have 2 defenders on their entire defense that have more than 10 or more quarterback hurries on the season. The number 1 guy has got 13. Their number 2 guy has 10. If you want to kind of have a little bit of context on putting that into perspective, okay? So their number 1 guy has 13. Their number 2 guy has 10. Myron Tungavaloa by himself has more than that. Actually, let me do that real quick because that's hurries. So total pressures, okay? Those are hurries. Total pressures, 17, 15, 13, 11, 11, 10. That's their 6 best pass rushers in total pressures, okay? Only 2 guys have more than 10 hurries. So total pressures, they have 6 guys that have 10 or more, nobody with more than 17. If you look at Notre Dame has their top guy has 31. Their number 2 guy has 30. Their number 3 guy has 22, and that's Isaiah Foskey. And I think that's an undersold number.
That's a lower number than I anticipated.
12 of his 22 have been hits on the quarterback, either sacks or hits, right? So that puts it into context,
right?
But yeah, it's 169. Notre Dame has 169 total pressures this year. Virginia has 114 total pressures this year. That's a lot. And again, Notre Dame's is a little bit lower because they just got done playing a triple option team who threw the ball, who called 5 drop back plays the whole game. And Notre Dame had, I think, pressures on 3 of those 5, right? Sacks on 2 of them.
Right.
So, but look, we've seen teams that aren't good at rushing the quarterback give Notre Dame problems this year. And the reason this matchup concerns me a little bit more than the number should, Vince, is because they are power rushers.
Yeah, exactly.
They are big physical. And I have nightmares of Josh Lugg and Joe Alt just coming off and these 300-pound kids just driving them into the quarterback.
Yeah.
That's a big concern. If they can give Jack Cohn a pocket and time to throw this week, he will go off.
Yes, he will have a Florida State-ish type, day, in my opinion. Yes, absolutely correct. Mm-hmm. So –